This is the MOJO Weekly News.
It was a tiger mauling, Richmond crushing Greater Western Sydney in Saturday's AFL Grand Final and claiming their second premiership in just 3 years. The GWS Giants, the big sound from the west of the town, were silenced in their maiden Grand Final match, leaving the Tiger Army to celebrate into the night. Tasting premiership glory for the second time in 3 years, the Tigers annihilating the Giants by 89 points. There were high hopes for Greater Western Sydney in the annual Grand Final parade, even though the city was flooded in a sea of yellow and black, swamping the Orange Brigade.
I like black and yellow.
But there was a big sound amongst the crowd.
We're the Greater Western Sydney Giants. We're the biggest and the best.
And also on social media, their theme song going viral among AFL fans.
Well, there's a big sound from the west of the town. It's the sound of the mighty Giants.
I heard that.
The Tiger Army was loud and proud.
Go Tigers.
Well, hello everybody.
Go Tigers.
And confident before the game even started.
Absolutely pumped. I know we're going to run over GWS, so this is our year again.
And 24 hours later, their confidence was shown in the final match, thumping GWS in one of the game's most emphatic Grand Final wins.
Pretty exciting. They played a great game of footy. GWS just couldn't bring it.
Tigerland lit up as Richmond fans celebrated. Launching flares and lighting fires. This man setting fire to a poster of Toby Green. And a mural painted for Norm Smith medalist Justin Martin. A man who allegedly stole a tow truck has been shot by police after a wild pursuit in Melbourne on Monday. Police followed the vehicle through multiple suburbs before it crashed into a tree in Sunshine.
Well, a driver who allegedly stole a tow truck was shot by police following a 1-hour pursuit through Melbourne's northwest suburbs on Monday. The chase began around 4 p.m. on Grange Road in South Morang before coming to a dramatic end in Wright Street, Sunshine, where the truck crashed into a tree and the driver was shot and arrested by police. Victoria Police allege the 35-year-old male driver drove erratically, running multiple red lights. The man was treated at the scene before being taken to hospital, where he remained under police observation. The chase occurred 3 days after the owner of the truck reported on Facebook that it had gone missing from his auto business in Craigieburn early on Friday morning. He said that he received a call on Monday from someone who thought that they had seen the truck, and so he and his father took it upon themselves to investigate, eventually finding it in South Morang. He said that they had chased the driver for about 20 minutes before police were able to come and take over. No one else was injured during the ordeal, and investigations into both the shooting and the theft of the truck are ongoing.
1 in 3 young adults have reported feeling lonely 3 or more times a week, according to new research by Swinburne University and Vic Health. The study found that higher levels of loneliness increase their risk of developing depression.
Well, the survey, while in its early stages of research, has found that lonely people are more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. Over 47% of young people stated that they sometimes or always feel they have no one to turn to. The study was focused on over 1,500 young Victorians aged between 12 to 25.
When we think about loneliness, we just have to consider that it's actually quite a normal experience, and it's normal to feel lonely. It's the alarming levels of loneliness that we found in our survey of young people aged 12 to 25 that was what we regard as a problem that needs to be addressed in some way. Solutions are difficult. It's not very easy just to say to people, go out and make a friend. It's better to be able to look at maybe having more quality friendships as opposed to quantity.
While there is no specific cure for depression, here is what some Monash students have to say.
I usually overcome my loneliness by entering a state of flow. Sometimes I happen to read a lot when I get lonely. It's more or less, it's like a one-directional way of having someone talk to you about things. I read a lot of self-help books, and that has helped me cope a lot with my situations.
Australian Loneliness Survey also found that young adults reported more loneliness than adolescents.
The other link that was found was the link between people who are lonely and socially isolated possibly have a higher likelihood of increased depressive symptoms, 18% for the young people aged 12 to 25 and 12% for anxiety. So the link between loneliness and poor mental health outcomes is of major concern for us, and we'd like to do more research in the area.
One of the main advice given by researchers to make friends easily is to find people with similar interests.
And now here's Sheetal Singh with the rest of the week's top stories.
Melbourne man William Wilson was charged earlier this week for dangerous driving, resulting in death of a pregnant mother of 2. Helena Broadbent was 5 months pregnant when she was allegedly flung from the backseat of her car as she was driven around a corner. She was airlifted to the hospital where her baby was delivered by emergency C-section. Miss Broadbent died in hospital on Saturday, a few hours after delivering the baby, which is understood to be in a critical condition. The 32-year-old is remembered as a loving and caring mom by her friends and family. A massive fire engulfed a factory in Dandenong South on Friday. 2 people were sleeping inside the property when the fire broke out. They escaped the property uninjured and were later treated for smoke inhalation. It took more than 50 firefighters to control the blaze. The incident is not being treated as suspicious. The Australian Capital Territory has become the first place in Australia to legalise cannabis possession for personal use. Individuals will be allowed to keep a maximum of 2 plants or up to 4 plants per household. This, however, conflicts with the Commonwealth law. Gordon Ramsay, the Attorney General of the ACT, says those prosecuted under the Commonwealth law for possessing small amounts of marijuana will be provided with a legal defence. As impeachment moves grow strength against US President Donald Trump, an anonymous whistleblower is concerned for their safety. The impeachment inquiry was sparked by an alleged phone conversation Donald Trump had with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on July 25. The whistleblower, who is a US intelligence officer, alleges Mr. Trump pressured Mr. Zelensky to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden in return for a withheld $400 million in military aid.
4 years ago, a young man named Dan Haslam died from bowel cancer, and after months of campaigning, a law was passed in 2016 allowing doctors to legally prescribe medicinal cannabis to patients with specific medical conditions. This is known as Dan's Law. But today, Dan's mother Lucy says she's disappointed and angry because terminally ill patients still struggle to access the treatment.
When Dan Haslam died from bowel cancer in 2014, his death inspired a groundbreaking new medicinal cannabis law named after him. His mother Lucy said when her son took the medicinal cannabis, it was as close to a miracle she'd ever seen.
He immediately felt okay and he wanted something to eat, which was just never happened when he was having chemo. So he didn't ever vomit again for the rest of his chemotherapy treatment.
His mother Lucy has been fighting for terminal patient access to full-spectrum herbal medicinal cannabis, but has been met with opposition.
The hoops that patients have to jump through are just horrendous. It's not prescribed like other pharmaceuticals, even though they say they want to treat it like other drugs. In fact, they've actually made a whole plethora of regulation.
Despite the legislation of medicinal cannabis, its access is in regulatory limbo.
I get now calls regularly from patients. I got one today, patient who did get approval to get it legally, but then they couldn't afford it. And, that is common. That is common. And the way it's set up now, it's not going to be able to be subsidised.
According to the Victorian Department of Health and Human Services, any doctor in Victoria can prescribe medicinal cannabis for any patient with any condition if they have the required Commonwealth and or state approvals.
I had an email today from somebody whose mother had committed suicide in Canberra Hospital and was denied access to medical cannabis. She was so desperate for pain relief, she committed suicide in the hospital after being denied access. I know of children that have died being denied access. What are we doing? It's crazy.
Lucy went to Canberra in the hopes of amending the medicinal cannabis laws, but Health Minister Greg Hunt refused to meet her.
The following day, he met Olivia Newton-John, and she spoke to him about patient access to medical cannabis. And Olivia said to me, Lucy, he's not interested in patient access. He's quite happy for Australian companies to be exporting products to Germany and supplying German patients, but he's not interested in improving patient access in Australia. And that makes me more than a little bit pissed off, to be honest.
Lucy Haslam's Change.org page currently has over 400,000 signatures, and Lucy hopes that by reinstating the petition will honour her late son's life and hard work. David Bonadio, MOJO News.
The New South Wales Parliament has passed laws decriminalising abortion, becoming the final state in Australia to do so. Abortion was included in the state's criminal code more than 100 years ago, and after 8 weeks of political debate, it's now been overturned.
Pro-abortion groups celebrated the decriminalisation of abortion in New South Wales. More than 100 years later, abortion will be removed from the state's Crimes Act. After the draft was debated in the lower house of the New South Wales Parliament, it was finally passed last week. Though abortion has been illegal in New South Wales since 1900, doctors have been performing legal abortions since the 1970s. These are exclusive to cases where there is a danger to the baby or the mother. Despite this, health practitioners could still have been prosecuted as abortion was still under the Crimes Act. The new law means it will now be the choice of women to have an abortion provided that the pregnancy is under 22 weeks. Now there are no limitations on when and why an abortion can be requested, as long as they provide informed consent. While the law is welcomed by many pro-abortion groups, there are limitations to the law. Post the 22-week pregnancy period, 2 doctors will be required to decide about the termination. Federal Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce and former Prime Minister Tony Abbott were the high-profile opponents to the bill.
A council in regional Victoria has been granted a $1 million drought relief package from the federal government, but they say they don't need it. For more on this, let's go to political correspondent Angelica Snowden. Ange, they say they're not suffering drought.
Yes, Chester, that's right. Moyne Shire Council Mayor Mick Wolfe says he does not believe the Shire needs the funding because it isn't suffering drought. The Mayor says the council didn't apply for the funding and has enjoyed rainfall since a late autumn break. Councillors will meet today to decide if they keep the money, with some saying other areas need it more. Attorney General Christian Porter must approve any order for a journalist to be prosecuted for a story relating to national security under Australia's complex secrecy laws. ABC and News Corp journalists were raided by federal police earlier this year after publishing stories concerning national security. Accomplished political reporter Michelle Grattan says the Attorney General is signalling journalists will be protected from prosecution. It comes as the Australian Federal Police has not ruled out charging the journalists for their stories about surveillance and poor behaviour by Australian Special Forces in Afghanistan. Under the coalition, new drugs will be added to the pharmaceutical benefit scheme to make treatments for diseases, including lung cancer and leukemia, cheaper. The price of lung cancer medications will come down from $11,400 per script to just $40.30 and $6.50 for pensioners. Many other drugs will be made cheaper and include those which treat nausea caused by chemotherapy, as well as those that treat seizures, nerve pain and high cholesterol levels. Labor and the Australian Medical Association called for faster progress. The coalition said that delays were due to company supply issues. Victorian warehouse owners stockpiling tons of rubbish amid the state's recycling crisis are asking Environment Minister Lily D'Ambrosio what they should do with their waste. SKM Recycling was placed into receivership in August, but has begun recycling some waste again at its Laverton plant after renowned restructuring company Cordamenta took over management. Cordamenta received a $10 million state government loan to help the recycling business begin processing again, as 5 warehouse owners amassed 50,000 tonnes of rubbish that would usually have been processed by SKM. Ms D'Ambrosio says the government's priority was to help businesses begin recycling again, and they will continue to work through the waste mess with warehouse owners. Back to you, Chester.
All right, Ange, we'll leave it there. Thank you. And now here's sport with Brittany Coles.
Thanks, Chester. Richmond have confirmed they are the #1 team in the AFL, defeating GWS by 89 points in the most lopsided grand final in 12 years. The yellow and black Tiger Army now have its second flag in 3 years and second premiership win in just a week, following Richmond's VFL victory. GWS did not kick a goal from 20 minutes in the first term until 24 minutes into the third, as the Tigers applied their trademark relentless pressure. Dustin Martin shone with 4 goals and won his second Norm Smith medal, ending his short speech by yelling "Yellow and Black" to the roaring crowd of more than 100,000 people who watched the final dance last Saturday at the MCG. From AFL to NRL and top-of-the-ladder team, Melbourne Storm has hung up its boots too. The Sydney Roosters crushed Melbourne Storm 14-6 during the prelim final at SCG on Sunday. The brutal showdown dashed hopes for another season win for the premiership favourite Melbourne Storm. The Sydney Roosters will now play the Canberra Raiders in the NRL Grand Final this coming weekend. And more heartbreaking loss at the Rugby World Cup. Wales defeated Wallabies 29-25 in Japan. A Welsh penalty goal with 9 minutes left pushed Wales to the 4-point lead, with Australia unable to get across the line. The win broke the 32-year record since Wales had won against the Wallabies. Australia has its sights set on gold now athletes are qualifying for a place in the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. Australia's softball team has booked its place at next year's Olympics after defeating China 9-3 in the last game of the softball Asia qualifier in Shanghai. They're joining Australia's national basketball team, the Boomers, who last month also qualified to compete in Tokyo. Well, it's sad to see the end of the AFL season, Chester, but I'm sure the grand final celebrations will continue down Swan Street.
Yeah, what a game on Saturday, Britt. Thank you. And that is Mojo News for now. You can stay up to date on our website, mojonews.com.au. I'm Chester Nell, and I hope you enjoy your week. From the team, bye for now.